Today, we're getting ready to tear apart Little Red. This little truck's been awesome. This is our project truck for you guys, our readers of the magazine. From issue 2 or 3, I think is when we started this. This was just our budget little hot rod to build and drive, and it's been awesome. And it's just starting to get a little tired, so we got to do some freshening up. And I should have done it a long time ago. Actually, when I drove this to Syracuse, the transmission was slipping before then, and that was 2019. So here we are in 2022, and it's still, I mean, I could still hop in this thing and fire it up and drive it down the road and know it'll get me home. But trans is slipping more. The number 4 cam lobe is starting to get eaten off the cam, and it's the motor. It's a 409-inch small block. I know it's 40 over when I put the cylinder heads on. We saw that, but I've never done anything with the bottom end. I don't know what cam is in it or anything like that, so I want to pull the motor apart, freshen it up. It's starting to leak oil. This thing's been like a best friend, you know, so it's kind of hard to even take it apart because it's still working and driving. But amazingly, I got it to fit on my lift, and if you come in, you can see how close it is on the cab corners and the exhaust here and stuff. But it's due, it really is. It's time to do something. So we're gonna freshen the motor up. I'm probably gonna do a hydraulic roller in it. Transmission is a 204R. I had $30 tied up into it, so it really doesn't owe me a thing. And I have another 204R that I bought from a friend of mine that bought one of my old cars. He switched his to a 6-speed, so I got the 204R. That's a little more prep for horsepower, so it'll handle this 409 when we beef it up a little bit more. Might as well show you around it a little bit before we take it apart. I got the bed floor out right now. You can see the 64 Corvette rear suspension, the whole rear frame clip. This part in here, this was all broken up as one piece from here to here. And I broke that up and bent it and welded it all up, and it's actually covering the frame rails of the 64 Corvette. You see that cross member there is Corvette. This actually came out of my dad's Pro Streeter that is now a gasser. The drive shaft came out of my old 55 Chevy. There's a lot of used parts and stuff. So it's again, it's really hard for me to take this apart because it's just been such a good little truck. But we're gonna start taking it apart today. I gotta drain the fuel system. I think we'll probably be able to pull the transmission and motor separate and not even have to take the front of the car apart. But come on up here, I'll show you some of the stuff we did on it. My dad actually designed these bat wings here. We covered this in the magazine. They bolt onto the stock 46 axle. So we could use hairpins. I bought the hairpins off of eBay for like 90 bucks, and just use the transverse spring for like a T-bucket would use, suicide perch. We straightened out the steering by tucking these in to make it a good front steer, so the Ackerman angle is correct. So when you turn the wheel, the Ackerman angle, this inside wheel has to turn sharper than the outside wheel. So when we used these arms originally, it made it so the inside actually turned less sharp than the outside. So now by bending these arms to get them tucked into that wheel as tight as we could, it increased that Ackerman angle and corrected that, so the car handles a little better now. And you can see when it turns, that wheel turns a lot sharper than this one. And fix that. It goes down the road good. It feels like a go-kart. It's got all the good stuff that hot rod should have. Like I said, 409-inch small block, overdrive transmission. It's got a 411 posi rear. So all that stuff's going to stay. We're just going to make it better, you know. So, but it's kind of hard to take old reliable. Things always got me home no matter what. It's, you know, even gas tank fell out one time and had a ratchet strap it up, but I still got home. I've had alternator bracket break. I had my fan pulley break, and got home without overheating. Even with when I took the fan off, there was enough air going through the grill. You turn the fan to keep the water pump flowing, and we made it home with no trouble. It's taken us from Murphy, North Carolina, up to Syracuse Nationals and back, through Philadelphia and all those crappy roads up there, and here it sits, you know. So as much as I hate to take it apart, I'm looking forward to it. It deserves it, so we're going to improve it, and we'll keep you updates on along the way. Well, right now Liberty is running the bowls dry in the carburetor. We shut the fuel off. Never used the drip. Leaking out of the back of the intake. gonna try to run the bowls dry, use up what's in the fuel system. Less chance of a leak. We got the tank shut off. That way we don't have to worry about spilling gas all over. This was out of my 55 Chevy originally, and we shortened it up to fit here, and drove it like that for years, and sent it down to Atlanta Driveline Services to have them balance it, and just homemade welding it in the shop, and that's all I had to do is add one little washer on there to balance it. So we did a pretty good job on it. All right, Liberty's pulling off the hood support rod so we can get access to the motor, and I think what we'll be able to do is gonna take this rod off and then disconnect the tranny bolts and the converter bolts, take off the water pump and the shroud, and we'll be able to pick the motor straight up, move it forward a little bit, pick it up and out, and not have to pull the whole nose off the car. And pull the nose comes off pretty easy. It's a couple bolts and disconnect the wiring, but it's just, I think if we do it this way, the radiator can stay put and everything. So I took the door off because it gives us more room. When you open the door, it hits the lift. So this way we can get in there to get to those bolts. Liberty is disconnecting the fuel line, and I disconnected the TV cable, which goes to this bracket. So if you guys are running a 700R4 or 204R, you have to have a TV cable on it, which is this here. Looks like the old school Turbo 350. Crucial on the line pressure. And a lot of people just stick a bolt in the carburetor, but you really need this correct thing to get the TV cable corrector bracket to bolt to your old school Holleys or Autobrock carbs. This one's a Holley one. It's got the H on it, the Autobrock 11E, or E or C for Carter. And your TV cable line hooks up to that spot there, and then you adjust it just as you know, it's easy. Set the line back, full throttle, boom, done. So we got that disconnected. Getting ready to disconnect the oil pressure line. Got the hood rod out, and door back on the car. Okay, now we're gonna open up the radiator leaker outer valve and start draining this sucker. Liberty already got the header off to one side. We're also gonna probably make a mess of this antifreeze because that's what we're really good at. And then we mix speedy dry in it and it turns into chicken shit. And today we're having, huh? I see how it is. Instead of coming apart, there we go. All right. There it is, guys. Our first amount of chicken shit. Didn't spill too much. It just kind of sweats out of there and spits around. All right, so we're pulling the scoop and carburetors off. I was kind of hoping to take it off as one unit, but in order to get the distributor out, the rear carburetor has to come off anyway. So we're just going to pull the carbs. So I'm just making the fuel line. Liberty's pulling the screws for the scoop, so we get that out of the way. And then we're going to pull the distributor out. Well, get the carb off, pull the distributor out, put the carb back on, and keep crap from falling down in there in the meantime. All right, so we got the distributor out, pull the carb off, set it back on, keep the crap out of there. And then we're gonna take this shroud off, and the warn and watch your fenders decals can be bought. I believe I have them on easternhotroder.com. If not, send me a message and I can give them to you. So this bolt shares the same bolt as the same thing that holds the radiator in. I'm gonna do it without taking the radiator out, so what I'd have to do is take this one out and kind of disconnect each side and put the radiator back, put the bolts back in to hold the radiator in place. Once that shroud's off, we'll pull the water pump, get the water pump out of the way, take the shroud right out, and we'll have room plenty for pulling this sucker. I'll probably have to take the master cylinder off. You can see how close it is to the valve cover. I'll disconnect it, just move it out to the side, and we'll be able to come right up and out. But you can see from above, plenty of room, and we're getting there. Sadie's taking off the fuel pump now. So I even got my 13-year-old helping out here. She's worried about the drippages coming out of the fuel pump.
I hate you.
But I told her, don't worry about it, just take it out. So she's learning about drippages today. After much decision making and discussing, we decided to take the radiator out. It was just as easy to take it out anyway, so gives us plenty of room. And we still don't have to mess with the wiring. You see there's the transmission cooler. The wires run along that and then go over to that block right there. So it'd be easy to take them off, and the whole nose comes off the car pretty easy. Take those wires off, bolt on either side of the old fender strut, and a few bolts around the radiator brace, and the whole nose comes off. But no need to do that. So we're gonna proceed as we're going. So we're down to converter bolts, bell housing bolts, motor mount bolts, and I think we'll probably take the intake off so we don't have to lift the motor as high, or the boom so high to get the motor up and out, and we'll have this sucker out. There's the intake. So one of the reasons I wanted to take this apart, I remember saying the cam was starting to go. Last time I adjusted the valves, I noticed the end of one of the push rods was starting to wear off, and Liberty was feeling around inside there and found those two little pieces. They were laying right in here in this groove, so we're lucky we got them. They did not go down into the pan at all. That's one of the reasons why I decided to pull this motor apart and rebuild it. But you can see, tunnel ram ran nice and clean. The ports look like the day we put them on. There's not a lot of carbon or anything inside there. So it's going to be a basic rebuild. Hopefully I don't have to rebore it and I can reuse the pistons and just re-ring it. Pull the plugs out so we can rotate the motor over to get the converter bolts out. But I just want to show you guys, these are just how they came out of the engine. They're all pretty good shape. You can see they're all burning pretty decent. You know, there's not much deposit, no flaking, no nothing like that. They're not carbon fouled. They're not all oil fouled. They're not all gooped up with anything. And I'm running a tunnel ram with dual quads and on the street. So when people tell you can't run a tunnel ram on the street, tell them they're full of crap. Tunnel rams are awesome. I love them. And it's those carburetors that I have on it, and we'll bring it over here. They're two Holley 600s, just vacuum secondary 600s. I have them set up in series, so they're direct 1-to-1 on the linkage. And all I did was rejet the front and change the power valve to suit the motor. And I've been running it ever since, and just a good, reliable setup. So I love them. Don't be afraid to cut a hole in your hood. It's fun. All right, so we're pulling the converter bolts out now. We've already taken out the brackets and stuff for the shifter and the motor mount, or the transmission mount bolts. We got to disconnect the transmission lines, and then up top we'll take off the dipstick for the transmission. So that way the transmission come out too. But that'll, once we get these bolts out of the converter, it'll just be the bell housing bolts, which all the bell housing bolts we can reach from up top, which makes it nice and safe. And we'll be able to lift this little engine out and then pull the train. It'll be done before dinner time. Didn't have to take the master cylinder off after all. It's cleared it. So we're good there. Keep going, keep going. I'm hoping we'll be able to pick this up high enough because I did not extend the jack. But there it is, hanging out. And I just got a call that my wheels and tires are ready on my Tahoe, so we're gonna have to get this thing out and on the ground and then drag the tranny out so I can get down to that shop and pick it up because they just closed. It's 5 o'clock. Picked up the Tahoe, and there's the new wheels and tires. Looks so much better than the cop wheels. So here we are. We got motor on the stand. Intake off it like we did, and it's all bolted up nice and secure. And we have our big mess here. The jack slipped and the transmission slid down off the jack. So before I had a chance to actually get ready to pull the transmission, it decided to pull itself. So that all barfed out of the tail shaft. Luckily I got the converter off first, so that didn't make too much of a mess. So here we are, big engineless, transmissionless little hot rod. And you can see all made the transmission mount removable, which we didn't end up having to do. And now I'm gonna probably push this outside, pressure wash it, clean this oil leaky crap off the exhaust, and clean and repaint it while the motor's out at the machine shop getting machine work done. So our next step before we do that, we'll be tearing this little bugger down and doing some inspection, find out how it is. The cam and lifters out, and they're all in better shape than I thought they were, but there's a few of these where if I catch the light right, you'll see they're starting to get dimpled pretty good. There isn't one that really stands out as real bad. There's none of the lobes are eating on the cam. So it's actually in better shape than I thought, but what got me thinking that there's probably a bigger problem is this is what happened to one of my push rods. I don't know if we can
focus on that. You can see the end of it got chewed right up. That's where it went into the rocker arm. You see how worn it got there. These chips, we found all these chips in the cylinder head and also in the lifter valley. This one. Couple of these, you can see right there, where the push rod actually started to take out the valve guide, or the push rod guide plate a little bit. See a little notch there, a little notch there. The rest of these are pretty good. There's a little notch in this one here too. This one here you can see, it's got a pretty good sized notch in it. So I'll probably have to get a set of guides. I don't know what is causing. I don't know if it was slamming on the cylinder heads or.
All right, so we just pulled number 3. Number 3 is looking worse. Number 2 is worse than 1. Number 3 is worse than that. And it's not terrible, but you can see the wear there, and you can see it's worn pretty good there. So this motor is due. We still got 5 more to pull, so we'll see what ends up showing. I can feel that a little bit in that bearing. The crank looks all right, so I'll probably just have to polish the crank. Right now, these bearings, I checked them out, they're 10 under already. So we got all those pistons and rods out. That number 3 was the worst of the bunch, but by far way better than a lot of the other ones I've seen. So now we just got to take the main caps off and pull the crank out. This is a 4-bolt main 400 block, so it's a, if I remember right, the date code said it was a 71. This is the most I've ever had this motor apart, so I'm actually looking forward to going through the whole thing and getting it all freshened up, cleaned up, painted nice and shiny, and back in little red. So we pulled the mains off. This number 3 main had a really big score in it. I'll see if we can show you that one. See it, groove cut right in there. That's from debris getting caught between the bearing and the crank, and you can, it's hard to see in the video, but I can feel that. I'm pretty sure it might take a little turning to get that out, but I think we could probably save the crankshaft. So let's see what we have for a bearing in this. This one. This is also turned 10, so we might have to go 20 on the crank to clean it up. Might only have to go 15 on the crank to clean it up. So there's the 0.010. So there you have it, guys. Got the motor and transmission out after a few hours of disconnecting and pulling and a few more hours of disassembly and inspection. We're ready to bring that block up to the machine shop to have it dropped off and checked and cleaned and getting ready to go back together, to put it right back to where I'm standing after we do a bunch of cleaning and detailing and touching up and repainting to get this little red hot rod looking great and ready to ride again. So.